So today I'm going to be taking a look at the Longines Sector Heritage. This is a pretty cool release. I think it was released within the past maybe year. Great size, great looking watch, and yeah, let's get into it and see how it is. We have a diameter of 38.5 millimeters, a lug to lug of 47.5, a height of 11 millimeters, and a lug width of 19. Some other general specifications for the watch: we are going to have the Longines caliber L893 beating away in the back here. It is an ETA-based caliber, and I think it's kind of like an ETA-based movement that only Longines has used so far. It has a 64-hour power reserve, which is pretty cool. Beats at 25,200 vibrations per hour, and mine is currently running at about plus 5 seconds a day, which is pretty good overall. We have 30 meters of stated water resistance with just a regular push-pull crown. We have a slightly boxed sapphire crystal here, which has under AR coating, which is always nice to see. And last but not least, this retails for $2,150, but usually can be found on the pre-owned market for maybe around $1,600, give or take. So starting off with the dial here, and let's make the dial look a little prettier by setting the time the right way. There we go. And basically looking at the dial, we have this kind of sector pilot style layout. We have the nice crosshairs here. I'm a sucker for pretty much any watch that uses crosshairs. I just think it looks cool. It fills up a lot of empty space, which I really like as well. And I just think it adds a little bit of vintage flair to the watch, especially if it already has a vintage styling about it. We can see we have the 12, 3, and 9 numerals here with technically a 6 that's a little bit cut off, or really a lot of it cut off. We also have the 3 and 9, which are sideways versus right side up. It's a little bit weird to me. I know it is a very common styling for this type of watch, but I think I would have preferred it if they were both right side up, just in my opinion. Looking at the layout a little bit more generally, we see we have this kind of outer section here in this kind of gray brushed metallic look. We also have it flanked by a kind of off-white cream coloration on the very outside, as well as in the middle section here in both the inner dial and the subdial, having that same kind of tone to it. Looking closer at the subdial, it's kind of hard to see, but once I zoom in, you'll be able to tell it has a little bit of concentric circling in it, which is a nice kind of breakup, adds a little bit of visual interest to a rather sterilely designed watch. And really, last but not least, we have these beautiful heat blue treated hands. They are always kind of in this blackish, dark blue range, but they obviously come out and have this really nice blue that comes out and plays and just has fun and just looks amazing for both the hour, minute, and second hand. The only kind of negative about it would be the kind of center caps for both these handsets are in kind of stainless steel, just in that kind of plain silverish. And I think it would have looked a little bit better if it was all blued. Overall, very, very clean dial. I think it is just nice. All the elements work really nice together. The kind of thin elements within the hands fit all the thin elements of both the numerals, kind of the hash marks, the crosshaired. So everything just works together. They didn't add any more text than they needed on the watch, and it is a good looking watch. Looking closer at the dial here, we see this nice circular graining pattern and a little bit more detail. We can also tell a little bit more at this magnification how much dimensionality these kind of black markers have. They aren't completely flat, and they also aren't super 3D, but they have just enough kind of puffiness to add a little bit of interest. And it is same for kind of all this black ink based elements on this kind of outer track here. So it's nice to see Longines kind of doing things they don't necessarily need to do, but things that just add completely to how good the watch looks. You can see the concentric circles here done really well. Again, breaks up the kind of sterile nature of the watch. Printing done nicely again. And we do have this slight imperfection here with this kind of fuzz. This little bit of fuzz here is actually on the dial itself. It can be easily blown out by a watchmaker or sent back to Longines under warranty, but you know, it sucks to see, but some things just make it through QC sometimes. Overall, really nicely done dial. Again, very clean and very simple, but sometimes when you have simplicity, things can go wrong. Like these blue hands can be just very horribly done, but thankfully they are not. They have a nice blue sheen to them. They aren't splotchy or miscolored or misshapen. They are done very, very nicely, all the way down to this kind of smaller area here with the blued sub-seconds hand. So it's all done really nicely. Again, a little bit of a bummer for this like silver stainless steel caps here, but not too much to complain about. It is a well done dial. Looking at the case more generally, it is very, very simply done. It is basically all brushed. We have a horizontal brushing along the case sides, kind of more circular brushing radially done on the lug tops there. Same circular radial brushing on the bezel here. We have a high polished crown as well as a high polished case back. The crown has a nice kind of Longines logo in there, kind of mirrored on the case back there. I think I would have preferred to see a kind of brushed or blasted case back. I think it would just fit the theme a little bit more, but it's a little bit nitpicky. One thing to note about the watch is it is really thin. A lot of the kind of height is coming from this kind of dome of the crystal here. The mid case is very thin, the case back is almost non-existent, and the bezel isn't too thick either. And you do have a nice kind of little bit of curvature in the lugs here. So overall, this watch is going to wear well because not only is it under 40 millimeters, but it has a short lug to lug, and it is actually ergonomically based. One thing I might change with the watch is make this kind of flat bezel a little bit more three-dimensional. Well, I mean, we are in a 3D world, but make it a little bit more kind of slanted so it kind of meets the crystal a little bit more. I just would think it kind of ties into the design a little bit better, but maybe they were going a little bit more for that kind of acrylic dome kind of look, which isn't bad either. And before I move on, just noting the crown, I think it is well sized. Overall, it is pretty flat, and that's not bad because it is fairly wide and it has a good grip to it, so it's easy to wind. It is a very, very buttery smooth winding experience, very, very quiet as well. So nice movement in here, accurate movement, and feels good to wind. Moving on to how the watch wears. Earlier I was wearing my Creedor here, and here we have the Longines on my 6.5 inch wrist, and I think you can tell it wears really, really well. It has a fairly constrained lug to lug distance. I think the just case diameter fits well within like just the overall proportionality of my arm, and I think they just did well with kind of all the proportions on this watch. There are a lot of kind of thin elements within the dial. There is the thinness of the hands, of the crosshairs, of the kind of numerals themselves. And the actual case kind of mirrors that. It's not too thick in the lugs, it is not too thick in the bezel, it is not too thick overall. So in the end, they created a very, very cohesive design here that, when on the wrist, comes together to create a really nice package. Looking at it from the side there, again, it isn't necessarily the most perfectly ergonomic case, but once that case back sits into the wrist, it does sit pretty flush to the wrist. Very, very comfortable. I have no complaints with how it wears. It is a really nice looking watch on wrist, a comfortable wearing watch, and yeah, the only complaint I would have is maybe the 19mm lugs, but I have so many 19mm straps at this point, it's kind of a non-issue for me. Before I put it on some other straps, I just want to mention this is not the stock strap. This is a nice red Fluco suede straps. Some of the best suede straps I've ever come across. They basically make the straps for Nomos that sell for like $100, and these retail for like 30 to 40 on eBay, so get yourself one. It's an amazing quality strap. Here we have the stock Longines strap. It is this kind of like nice black calf leather. It is very, very supple. I think it is probably one of the best kind of stock OEM straps I've ever come across. Very supple straight out of the box, no real wear required. I think it pairs well with the watch. The black tone of the strap matches really well with all the black elements on the watch itself, which I think is really nice. But overall, I'm not a huge black strap guy, so I haven't worn this a bunch, but it is a very nice strap. And there we have it on wrist. Really nice look to it. Very, very comfortable. Maybe needs a little bit wearing in because it doesn't fit as flush as the suede did. One thing I will note, if I move this kind of thing out of the way here, is that this is the very last hole I'm on. I have a 6.5 inch wrist. So if you have anything smaller than my 6.5 inch wrist, this stock strap isn't going to fit you out of the box. So either just poke a hole in it or plan on buying some other straps. Here's another stock strap that comes with the watch, and I think it looks gorgeous. It looks amazing with the watch itself. The only problem is this comes in an 18mm width, while the watch is 19. I do not know why Longines made that decision. It looks horrible because there is a little bit of a gap within the case itself. Why would you do this? Just give us a 19mm strap. I don't even think you include these with other watches, so why would you make it 18 for this watch? A little bit of an annoyance, but I'll show you a watch that is comparable and actually in 19mm that looks just as good. Here we have the kind of replacement for that wrongly sized strap. This is the Crown and Buckle Chevron. I believe this is in the Oxford coloration. I think the blue plays really nicely with all the tones on the dial, kind of plays off the heat blued hands there. There we go. On wrist, I think it looks really nice, very, very comfortable, and a great strap that you should probably pick up if you buy this watch. Classing up the watch a little bit, we have this nice brown textured strap from Veblenist, and there we have it on wrist. I think it looks really nice. The brown just pairs really well with the blue and the white and the silver. And yeah, I have no complaints. And last but not least, the Archer white silicone strap. They now make these in 19 millimeters, so basically my dreams have come true. So I can pretty much put this on any watch I'd ever want to put it on. And I think it works on this watch. I think it pairs well, makes it very fun. And yeah, overall, no complaints with how it wears. I think it looks good. And just get yourself an Archer strap. I promise you'll like it. So pros and cons of this watch, I'm gonna say kind of like the first pro of it is just gonna be the size and the overall kind of just fit of the watch. I didn't expect it to fit as well as it did. I mean, it is really comfortable on wrist. It looks good on wrist. It is a great diameter. It is a great length. It is a great height. And I just like the kind of dimensions that they went for. I think it was kind of a Goldilocks kind of number. If they could have, of course, gone for a 36, which is probably something we're never going to see in the industry anytime soon, or they could have gone for like a 40 or a 42, which I think would have been a little bit too big. So they really nailed the size and the kind of feel of the watch here. Another pro for this watch is kind of the value for money that you're getting. This is at retail about $21.50, and that's in US dollars, but I mean, realistically, you can get at least 20% off, maybe 15% off from an AD. And if you go used, you're gonna get it at around $1,600. And I think for that price range, with the kind of quality of the movement, how smooth it feels, how decently well it runs, with the kind of dial quality, with the actual heat blued hands, this is a pretty good amount of watch for the money. It is a classic looking watch. It can fit in a lot of situations. And overall, I don't think you'll be disappointed with what you're paying for. And last but not least for this watch, of course, it is a vintage inspired watch. That's why it's part of the Heritage series. But I think that with this watch in particular, you get the vintage aesthetic. You get like the cool crosshair dial, which we just don't see in watches anymore really. You get the just kind of almost pseudo vintage dimensions and things like that, but you don't get the headache of an actual vintage piece. You don't have to worry about finding original parts or even parts that will work in the watch when you come to service it. You don't have to worry about the mechanical timekeeping issues. You don't have to worry about the materials that were used or possibly even fixed spring bars. So these are all things that vintage watches can give you a headache with that this watch kind of mitigates, and it's good that it does. So moving on to cons, and of course there are going to be some, and I think one of the biggest ones, not necessarily for me, but for a lot of people out there, is that it might be too simple of a watch. A lot of the collector community, I feel like, is very tool watch oriented and dive watch oriented. And this watch kind of fits in the tool watch category in the fact that it's like a field/pilot style, but it isn't necessarily as robust as a dive watch would be, or other tool watches like a Zen would be. So in the end, it is a little bit of a dressier piece. It is very much a vintage kind of modern watch, you know? And if that's not for you, it's just not for you. So moving on to two cons that I definitely have with the watch. These are, of course, my personal opinion. And the first is the stack on the hands. The actual cap that's over the center stack is lovely. It's always nice to have a cap to the handset. It is kind of an attention to detail that a lot of companies do. But in this case, they basically took a shortcut. They used a stainless steel cap where the hands are blued. And I think it definitely pops out at you at certain angles. It pops out at you in the right lighting. Sometimes the lovely blue hands distract you and it's not that big of a deal, and other times you're like, they really should have just made that part blue. They should heat treated it. So it would have probably maybe taken a little bit more time, a little more effort, but it's something I would have liked to see. And lastly, it's just the fact that the numerals are sideways for the 3 and the 9. I just wish they weren't. If they were right side up, I would have almost maybe even kept this watch. It is a gorgeous watch. It's just that I don't really mesh well with the sideways numerals. I just think it looks a little off in my personal opinion. And I mean, I can take or leave the cutoff 6. I don't love the fact that it's there and it's like, you only have like the circle part of the 6 there. It doesn't really make sense. They should have either made the subdial smaller or just bigger, or just not had the 6 numeral there at all. It doesn't make sense to me sometimes, but watch companies will do what watch companies do. But final thoughts on this watch, and I honestly was super pleasantly surprised. I've seen pictures of it online on Instagram, and I've thought, it looks okay, it looks kind of plain, it looks maybe like it'll be cool, but in person it fits so well. The elements come together. It is a really nicely executed watch, and I think a good amount of it has to do with the fact that it has heat blued hands on it. It just adds that little special feeling to the watch, a little bit of uniqueness to it, really. And I do really like that aspect of the watch. It is a very clean watch. It is well wearing. It is overall well priced, especially if you're considering used and kind of discounted AD pricing. So in the end, I would pretty much wholeheartedly recommend this watch if you even think you might like it. Of course, go try one on if you can, but if you can't, I don't think you'll be disappointed as long as you like the look. It is a great watch for money, it is a cool looking watch, and I enjoyed my time with it. So thank you for watching, I hope you got something out of the video, and I'll see you in another one.